In tonight's stories, obsession takes two very different shapes. A lazy writer hires a hitman to kill him if he misses his page count, and the contract becomes horrifyingly real. And a man's innocent love for lollipops spirals into a sweet, sticky madness that devours him from the inside out. Two tales of addiction, desperation, and the deadly taste of motivation. I was tired of being a lazy writer, so I hired a hitman to kill me if I didn't reach my page count. I found him on Craigslist. The ad's description was short and to the point. Too lazy? Death motivates. Hire a personal hitman for $100, month to meet your goals. No refunds. No cancellations. I thought it was funny. At first, there was a whole profile page for the guy. He was bald, had a squashed nose. His eyes were like tiny pinpricks in his thick face. Piggy eyes. His ears were cauliflowered out, big and swollen. He kinda looked like a cartoon character made out of flesh. The strangest bit, he was smiling. I didn't think hitmen were supposed to do that. His upper and lower lips were drawn into a soft, knowing smile, like there was some old joke between us that he was remembering. It would have been comforting if I had known what the joke was. He creeped me out, but I was intrigued. I'm a writer, and to be honest, I've always been a little lazy. It comes down to a problem I've been dealing with most of my life. Let me paint a picture. On any day of the week, I'll go to my computer and sit down to write. I have every intention of finally doing it. Finally getting to that one scene I've been going over in my head for weeks. I'd open up the document, stretch my fingers and wiggle them around to warm them up. Then I stare at the blank page for 10 seconds, 30 seconds. I blink, and somehow it's 30 minutes later. And I'm balls deep in Diablo 2. I was a mess, but I knew that if I had the proper motivation, I could finish my book. It's a book I've been working on for the past 5 years. A swashbuckling mystery romance, historical musical, with inspiration from Faulkner. Its use of ska really embellishes its themes. But every time I would make progress on it, I'd get distracted again. My window of opportunity was closing. I wasn't in high school anymore. Adult things like taxes and insurance were pressing down on me. The imminent loss of my freedom was closing in on all sides, making my brain claustrophobic. I knew if I didn't get this done now, I'd be stuck waiting tables at the Golden Corral TM for the rest of my life. Everywhere I went, the smell of mac and cheese, cheap steak, and old people past their expiration date hung in a cursed miasma around me. Even after a decade of working there, I had never gotten used to that combo. I needed professional help. I gathered my courage and responded to the ad. I got confirmation of the contract and was asked what I wanted my weekly goal to be. I took a while to settle on a Vanson number. I had to make it a reasonable one. That's just good goal setting. Third letter in SMART. Attainable. I decided 10 pages was a good amount to start with. At the time, I thought it was odd that the hitman didn't ask me my address or phone number, but I didn't question it too much. He was the expert here, not me. I sent off the email, and a bubble of nervous gas knotted itself in my lower intestine. Anxiety cramps. I drank some Pepto and tried to relax. I reminded myself I wasn't doing anything dangerous. I was just getting my ass into high gear. I was going to be fine. That first week, I was motivated. I finished my 10 pages in 3 days. I sent them off to my goal consultant at midnight on Wednesday. I was triumphant, like Sir Gregor in the medieval portion of my musical book when he had taken out a horde of space zombies with Iron Age tech. The jazz saxophone solo was a lot of fun to write. After a few minutes, I got a notification on my phone. A response email from my hitman. It was a thumbs up emoji. I relaxed. I didn't even realize I was tense. Looking back, I might have spent too much energy on that first week, because the next week was a lot slower. By the time Thursday rolled around, I only had about 4 pages. That night, I was sitting at my computer, making weird noises with my mouth and pretending I was a professional drummer, when I noticed something on my wall. It was a small red dot. It looked like it was some kind of laser pointer. It was weirdly steady, jiggling a bit here and there, almost like a little heartbeat. I stared at it for a long time, trying to figure out what it was. The anxiety cramps came back, bubbling in my gut like a dormant volcano. I told myself it was some weird neighborhood kid playing with their new laser pointer. I went back to goofing off, even though pains in my lower stomach were growing sharper. A minute later, the doorbell rang. I went to get it, and on the doormat was an envelope. It was pristine and unmarked, which was weird. I picked it up and shook it. It seemed to have only a piece of paper inside. I opened it up, pulled out the paper, and read it. 3 days. It took a moment for me to get it. Was this a joke? Was the gas company mad at me again for not paying my bills 3 months in a row? Then I remembered the hitman I had hired. I almost laughed out loud. I had completely spaced. Whoever this guy was, he was good. I took the letter inside and went back to my computer. The red dot was a few inches closer to my screen than it had been before. I started typing. I finished my 10 pages on Friday. Again, I was filled with feelings of victory. Just like Tsar Brian, the time-traveling Russian, when he saves Abraham Lincoln from a cyborg John Wilkes Booth. Another beloved scene from my book. I sent in the pages to the hitman. The red dot was still on my wall, still trembling with a strange regularity that made my chest clench up. The response email arrived. Another thumbs up. When I looked back at the dot, it had disappeared. I sighed, and my anxiety cramps went from an 8 out of 10 to a 4. I re-upped my subscription at the end of the month. It was hard to argue with the results. I had written more in a week than in the last 2 years combined. It was working. Besides, a large part of me didn't really think he was going to kill me. That would be illegal. In my moments of doubt, I told myself someone would stop him if it ever came to that. But a small part of me wasn't so sure. The next 2 weeks, I met my goals, no problem. I think it was because I had nailed the letter I had gotten to my wall. Every time I glanced over at it, I felt my fingers move faster on the keyboard. They shook with an eagerness I had never felt before. I kinda loved the rush. The next week, I ran into a bit of writer's block. There was a romance scene between a reanimated George Washington and a sexed-up Jimmy Carter that wasn't coming together for me. It was a pivotal moment in my book, basically the climax, and I couldn't move past it. On Friday, I only had 1 page written. That was when I started to get worried. At first, I tried to fudge the system. I typed in a whole bunch of random words to make it look like I had written 10 pages. When I pressed the send button, my stomach felt like it was full of knives. 2 minutes later, the response email arrived. It had only 2 words. Nice try. I couldn't fake my way out of this. I stayed up all that night at my computer, trying out every sort of idea in my head. I was blocked up, both in my gut and in my brain. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I still only had 1 page written. I had also downed an entire bottle of Tums to try and soothe my stabbing stomach. It didn't work. I had limited writing time on Saturday since I was working a double at the corral. I had bills to pay. There, I was desperate enough to ask my coworkers for help with the romance scene. The only help I got was Creepy Tommy pulling me into the bathroom to watch gay porn. I stayed until the end of the video so I wouldn't hurt his feelings. I was the last one left in the restaurant when it came time to close up. I was wiping throw-up off a table from an 80-year-old's birthday party when I felt my gut suddenly seize up again. It was so bad, I bent double. As I tried to keep from adding to the vomit on the table, I felt my back tingle, little ripples and spasms that made me shiver all over. Someone was watching me. I turned around, slowly, holding my stomach. My hitman was standing at the door. My heart stopped. He was tall and large in an almost fake-looking way. He was so still, it was easy to think he was actually made of plastic. His body rippled with muscles in a way that was grotesque and unreal, like pulsing animals underneath his skin. His face looked exactly like his profile picture. Piggy eyes, a soft chin, the small smile, so knowing, so unnerving. I felt vomit rise to the back of my throat again. The street lamp cast a sharp glare off his bald head that hurt my eyes. My knees went slack, and I braced myself against the table. I felt my hand touch throw up, but I didn't care. I tried to control my breathing, but it was like trying to stop a runaway train with one hand. Pointless. My hitman stared at me for a long time. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. I wanted to cry. He moved, and I jumped about 10 feet in the air. I also pissed my pants. After my body was done spazzing, I realized he wasn't trying to attack me. He had only moved one of his arms in front of him, his pointer finger sticking up towards the sky, straight and still. He mouthed something I couldn't hear through the glass. I tried to read his lips. It took a few seconds. One day. He said it 3 times. He smiled a little wider. Then he turned around and walked into the night. I didn't even finish cleaning up. I ran out the door, got into my car, and went home as fast as I could. I almost crashed 3 times. Eventually, I pulled into my parking spot, leapt out, and sprinted to the front door. I fumbled with the keys for a moment. Every second counted, and my sausage fingers were wasting them. After a bit of effort, I got the tumblers to turn, and I slammed open the door. I got inside, locked it, and pounded upstairs to my computer. I booted it up, not even taking time to change my pants. I started writing. I tried. I really did. By the time Sunday morning came around, I had 3 pages. I had broken down and used some of the stuff Creepy Tommy showed me, but I had to delete it. It didn't feel right for Jimmy Carter to say things like that, sexed up or not. At one point I got so desperate I called the police, but they stopped talking to me the minute I mentioned my contract. Thought it was some kind of practical joke. Also, I might have spent a bit too much time describing my book. I couldn't help it. I needed to practice my elevator pitch. I barricaded myself in my room. I locked the doors, put stuff up on the windows, anything to buy me time. I watched YouTube videos about writer's block while I worked. When that didn't help, I switched to rom-coms. At one point, I was watching 3 different films all at once at 2 times speed. I was also blasting the audiobook of A Court of Thorns and Roses on a portable speaker. The hours ticked by. When it was 2 hours to midnight, I had my breakthrough. Halfway through Jerry Maguire. It was so simple. The scene needed Tom Cruise, and it needed him bad. The 3rd member of the throuple. The person who ties them all together. I went to the page and started typing. An hour passed. 1 hour to midnight. I was at 5 pages. I did the math in my head and knew that I had to type faster. I focused on the story, not the smaller mistakes. As I typed, I let the typos build up to a pile the size of a mountain. Every thought I had, I put on the page. I let myself go onto tangents, explain things in long and circuitous ways. I could fix that in revision. And it wasn't half bad if I say so myself. Half an hour to midnight, 7 pages. As I typed, I heard something shift behind me. Was something in my closet? For a moment, I paused. Then I got back to work. I didn't have time to check. I kept writing. I stretched out a conversation about what date the 3 were going to go on, just so it could buy me another page. 10 minutes. 9 pages. I heard another noise behind me. I knew I shouldn't have looked. I knew I should have ignored it. But I ended up wasting 30 seconds of my precious time to glance behind me. At first, I didn't see anything. My room was empty, illuminated by my desk lamp with a strangely flat orange light. Then, I caught a flash from a dark corner. I saw him. He was peeking out of the closet. A sliver of his face was visible, that same half smile pulling on his cheeks. Was his smile wider now? The door pushed open at a snail's pace, and there he was. He emerged from the closet like some biblical giant, shoulders hunched and head bent so as not to brush the ceiling. My heart froze. He had gotten taller. He saw me staring at him, and his teeth became visible as his lips pulled back. His mouth was so terrifying, it took a while for me to realize that he was not baring his incisors at me like a wild animal. He was grinning. My heart was flushed with adrenaline, and I pushed onward. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. I wrote and wrote and wrote. So many typos, so many lines of cheesy dialogue. I might have even plagiarized lines from 50 First Dates. Adam Sandler was with me, even in the face of death. 5 minutes, a little more than half a page left. With each minute, I could feel the thud of my hitman's footsteps as he took another step towards me. I instinctively looked backward and saw he had nothing in his hands. That didn't make me feel better. My imagination grew wild with all he could do to me, with those positively huge hands with his strangely long fingers. The digits were tensed, ready to grab, to smash, to do something horrible to me that would leave me broken and mangled on the floor. I saw it all and knew it would happen to me with the certainty of a prophet. I typed furiously, my fingers aching with the effort. Half a page, a quarter, an eighth. The hitman continued to advance. I slammed my index finger on the period button. Done. 1 minute to midnight. 10 pages. I took a breath. I had finished. I turned to face the hitman. He raised his eyebrows slightly at me, still grinning. A horrifying realization hit me. I still had to send the email. My fingers slid along the buttons like I was drunk. 20 seconds left. I dragged the wrong file. I didn't even try to delete it. I just kept dragging until the correct one fell into place. 10 seconds. I typed in the hitman's email address, and I felt his breath on my neck. It was hot. It burned. Sweat poured down my nose. 5 seconds. I missed the send button on my first click. 2 seconds. I lined up my mouse with the paper airplane. 1. I hit send and backed away from the computer. I huddled in the corner, staring at the hitman, my arms held out protectively in front of me. The hitman stared back, still grinning, his arms held slightly forward and his fingers crooked in midair. Reaching towards me, a buzz came from his pocket. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a phone. His grin faded back to a smile. He scrolled for a moment. I didn't move. For 10 minutes I watched him read. Finally, he looked up at me. I could see his brow crease down. I held my breath. He raised his hand, and I closed my eyes. When I didn't feel him throttling me, I peeked out of my closed lids. His fingers were pulled into a fist, and his thumb was pointed straight into the air. A thumbs up. I threw up, all over the carpet. What felt like a full knife block was rolling around in my stomach. I was vaguely aware of the hitman leaving the room and closing the door with a click. His footsteps were so soft. That was the last straw. I couldn't handle it anymore after that. I sent an email letting him know I was canceling the subscription and his services would not be required. I hoped he would understand. I didn't get anything back. I laid in bed for 3 days. At least, I think I did. I'm not sure. I kind of blacked out a bit. It's been a week, and I've started to regain my bearings. I don't jump at every small noise anymore. I do find myself looking over at my closet a lot. Sometimes, I think I see eyes peeking in at me. But every time I'd go check, nothing's there. It's Sunday again. I got an old notification from my phone telling me to submit my 10 pages. A part of me wants to stay up and write, just to be safe. The perfect way to eat a lollipop, I have a confession to make. I have an unhealthy obsession with lollipops. And I don't just mean that I like to have one every now and then, or even one a day. I literally can't stop eating them. I always loved lollipops as a kid. I don't know when it started, but if you saw me as a kid, you would have seen a lollipop in my mouth, or at least in my hand. My parents always told me that sweets would rot my teeth, and even tried to take them away from me for good once. They never tried again. So on I went, sucking away happily, day after day. If you were to ask me why I loved them so much, I don't know if I would have had a genuine answer. I loved everything about them. The crinkle of the wrappers, the bright colors, the paper stick, and even the feeling the paper stick made as it slowly dissolved in your mouth while you sucked and licked at the sugary candy in your mouth. Sometimes I'd even chew on the stick, making sure I got the last few crystals before moving on to the next lollipop. I wasn't particular on the type either. I'd have Tootsie Pops, Dum Dums, Bubblegum Pops, and I even had one with a scorpion in it once. It wasn't anything spectacular, truth be told. This passion continued as I grew older, through high school and into college. I was so excited for college and looked forward to the fresh start it offered. By the end of the first week, I had settled into a solid group of friends, and we had coordinated to hang out after class Friday and watch movies, play games, eat pizza, and whatever else we could think of all weekend. I remember getting ready to meet up with everyone else because I put a lot of effort into it. Maybe too much. I wanted to make a good first impression with my new friend group because I hadn't been very popular in high school. Maybe even a part of me was hoping I'd finally start dating too. As I was about to head out, I took one last look in the mirror and felt like I'd been slapped. I looked good, sure, but something wasn't right, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. I was eating a fucking lollipop. I had dressed the part of an adult, but inside that grown-up costume in the mirror was a toddler looking back at me, sucking down on a piece of candy like a child. My world felt like it was crashing down on me in that moment, and suddenly, I felt like a kid who believed in Santa Claus just a little too long. It was uncanny, to be truthful. Thinking about it, I realized I had never really seen adults eating lollipops. They had candy every once in a while, but it was mostly chocolate and things like that. But a lollipop? It felt wrong. Childish, even. Disgusted with myself, I threw the lollipop out and left to meet with my friends. This hiatus lasted most of my college life. My friend group stood the test of time, and we were all looking forward to graduating together. Our weekend hangouts had become routine, and I always looked forward to them. One night, while we were all together watching TV, someone had commented on the commercials. I don't remember exactly what they said. Something about how they were too boring these days, and the commercials when we were kids were so much better. We ended up going down the rabbit hole, looking up old commercials from our childhood on YouTube. Eventually, somebody brought up the famous, "How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?" commercial. This, of course, led into a far too serious discussion about the right way to eat a lollipop. The room was surprisingly divided. About half of us sucked on a lollipop for a while, before getting bored and biting the last bit and chewing it. The other half, dubbed lollipop purists by their opposition, preferred to savor the candy, sucking on it the whole time. In all this discussion, a thought hit me like a truck. I'd never really considered it. My whole life before college, I was known for constantly eating lollipops. If anything, it was probably why I wasn't popular in high school. But I'd never considered what the best way was, or even which way I preferred to do it. Looking back, I think I did both. Or had I? Did I have a preference? Shockingly, I couldn't remember. For the second time in college, I felt a major shift in my life. I suddenly felt like a ship that had become unmoored, drifting along without purpose. For whatever reason, this notion bothered me deeply. On my way home, for the first time in years, I bought a bag of lollipops. I'm not sure if I had just wanted to find out for my own sake which way was best, or if I wanted to set the record straight amongst my friends. All I knew at the time was that I wanted to find out the best way to eat a lollipop. When I got into my apartment, I stood at the island in my kitchen, staring at the bag of dum-dums. Was this the right choice? I had sworn off lollipops for a long time, and for some reason, it suddenly felt wrong to be coming back to them. It felt taboo, like a recovering addict falling off the rest. Wagon. I ignored these primal warnings rising inside me and opened the bag. I picked one out. Cherry. Not my favorite, but it'd do. I untwisted the wrapper where it met the white paper stick and lifted it off the crystalline dome of sugar. The wrapper had maintained its shape and mimicked the rounded shape of the lollipop. The lollipop itself glistened red in the light of my apartment, almost beckoning to me. I held the white stick gingerly and placed the candy to my tongue. The dry candy met my wet tongue, and I closed my mouth around it. I moved the candy over my teeth and into my cheek to wet it more with saliva. As I did so, the clicking of the candy against my teeth evoked feelings of warmth, like curling up beside a fire with a cup of hot cocoa in the middle of winter. I spun the lollipop against my cheek, the initial layer of solid sugar finally yielding to my saliva, melting into my mouth. The cherry flavor as the newly liquidized sugar ran across my taste buds and down my throat was almost euphoric. I felt my mouth filling with saliva as I continued, soaking the candy, dampening my tongue and cheeks. I moved the lollipop forward, holding the rounded ball of sugar just behind my lips, sucking on it just enough to keep the flavor of it rolling across my tongue and into my esophagus. I swallowed, and the cherry ichor seeped deeper into my body, reaching out to my inner child. My lips pulsed, forward and backward, over and over. I pulled the lollipop back over my teeth and onto my tongue once more. I pushed the lollipop against the roof of my mouth with my tongue. The lollipop melted slowly as I sucked the cherry-flavored sugar and saliva mixture into my stomach. The white paper stick began to deteriorate, signaling that my time with the lollipop was nearing its end. The tightly wrapped paper the stick was made from began to unravel, falling apart and mixing with the liquids in my mouth. I imagined small specks of white paper in a sea of red liquid sugar, flowing down my throat, flaking the fleshy edges as it went, like some kind of low-budget glitter. I soon realized the paper stick had begun to stick out of the top of the lollipop. The sugar had eroded until it resembled a skewered animal. The white paper stuck clean through its victim, which now slowly oozed thick red liquid with every sucking motion I made. Soon the white stick was all that remained. Damp with saliva, a red stain was all that remained of what had once been a lollipop. I reached into the bag, root beer, and time for a new strategy. I unwrapped the lollipop, noticing that this time the wrapper was considerably flatter than the first. The herbaceous aroma wafted up to my nose as I brought the lollipop to my mouth. Suddenly, an image burst into my mind like a mental flash bang. From the outside looking in, this was ridiculous. Here I was, a grown-ass adult, standing in my kitchen alone in the middle of the night, sucking down on a lollipop like it was a religious experience. And for what? To figure out the best way to eat a lollipop? I scoffed to myself. It was childish. I threw out the lollipop and the rest of the bag along with it. As ridiculous as it may seem, I was proud of myself for moving on for lollipops in a weird way. I felt like a kid finally moving on from their childhood blanket or teddy bear that had been long worn out. With it came a newfound confidence in social life that I was not ready to lose. I was surprised, however, at how difficult resisting my urge to go back to lollipops would be. My friends carried on their debate for a long time, and each time I had to muster every ounce of willpower I had to get through the conversation. I felt trapped, because I knew how ridiculous it would sound if I told them what I was going through. One day, my friend and I were in class when I noticed he was staring at me. "What? What do you mean, what? Why are you staring at me?" "Are you serious?" "Yeah. Why are you staring at me?" "You staring at me?" He stared at me, and I could tell he was trying to hold in laughter. "I'm staring at you because you are absolutely going to town on that pen." He burst out laughing. I looked down, my pen shimmering with spit. I'd been sucking on it subconsciously. Oh shit. I didn't even realize. Finals must be stressing me out more than I thought, I said, chuckling nervously. I prayed he would brush it off too, and luckily he never said anything more about it. This was not the last time I would struggle with my obsession, however. Not too long after, the debate about the best way to eat a lollipop amongst my friends came to its peak. One Friday, someone walked in and dropped a big bag of Tootsie Pops on the table triumphantly. "All right, everybody, grab one. We're settling this tonight," he said. He was joking, but everyone seemed to enjoy the sugar for the night. I did pretty well avoiding them at first, but the alcohol slowly eroded away at my willpower, and I eventually gave in. I had one, after another, after another. It felt so good to just let go and return to my childhood. When the time came to go back to my apartment the next morning, nobody wanted to take the lollipops home. Someone asked me if I wanted them, and I said yes instinctively, realizing too late what I had agreed to. I caught the bag as it was thrown to me, stunned at my own actions. I plopped the bag on my island when I got home and stared down at it. I told myself every lie I could. Maybe I would just hide them, have one every once in a blue moon. Or maybe I could have some now and slowly wean myself back off until I didn't feel the burning desire to have them. It was all pointless. They were back, and I was powerless against them. I grabbed the first one from the bag. Chocolate. Ironic, considering the inside was chocolate. I plopped the large ball of sugar into my mouth. I knew this one would last longer than the cherry dum-dum I'd eaten previously. I let the moist environment of my mouth smooth and soften the candy. As I moved it into my cheek, my face distended to accommodate the mass. The size of the Tootsie Pop caused my skin to stretch tight across it, feeling almost like it was about to tear. Compressed between my teeth on one side and the taut skin of my cheek on the other, chocolate flavor was squeezed out of the lollipop, joy replacing fear. Air pockets that had formed in the crystallized sugar became jagged edges, digging into the soft, fleshy wall of my mouth. Soon, the hard exterior gave way to the softer, more tender chocolate interior. Like the prize at the bottom of a box of cereal, it was here. The reward for all my hard work was but moments away. Or it could be mine now. Impatience overtook me as I placed the candy between my teeth. I bore down until the candy began to fracture like glass. There was a loud crack that echoed into my skull and almost made me think I had broken a tooth. Sharp fragments fell apart in my mouth, digging into my tongue and gums. Meanwhile, the soft interior of the lollipop was squeezed between my teeth. As I went to bite again, the tar-like chocolate suctioned to my teeth, almost threatening to rip them from my gums. As I pulled my teeth from the soft chocolate, I could feel a soft popping as they were released from their captors. I bit down again, the chocolate softer, more tender than before. At least it was, until I felt the crunch of a shard of sugar crystal that had mixed with the terry chocolate, creating a clash of textures. The crushed sugar mixed with the chocolate to make a substance that felt like sand mixed with Play-Doh. Eventually, this gave way to a thick but mostly liquid substance, and I swallowed. I placed the stick between my front teeth, dragging it through them, scraping every last piece of chocolate into my mouth. I pulled the stick out of my mouth and threw it in the trash. Maybe an hour or so later, the bag was empty. I stood in my kitchen, saliva and chocolate rimming my lips, my mouth raw from the sugar and jagged candy. I needed more. I went to the closest store, scooped an armful of lollipops off the shelf, and rushed home. I ripped the first bag open and dumped it on the counter. I was thoroughly obsessed, trying different combinations of biting, licking, sucking, and everything in between I could think of to figure out the best way to eat the candy before me. I think I lost the first tooth when I tried biting a lollipop immediately without getting it wet first. The blood helped soften the sugar even faster, which was a new approach I hadn't considered previously. The sugar mixed with the blood to make a thick, almost gel-like texture that was easier to swallow. As I continued, the blood from my broken tooth masked my bleeding tongue, which had been rubbed raw from repeatedly licking the tough, granular candies. By the time I realized, my tongue was little more than a nub in my mouth, like the stain on a stick of a lollipop. The small nub was the only indication there had ever been a tongue in my mouth at all. I had finished about 2.5 bags, but continued, relying solely on sucking and chewing the candies. My tongue had been a weakness, a feeble tool to distract me from a better approach. The absence of a tongue provided significantly more room, allowing me to easily fit 2, sometimes even 3 lollipops in my mouth at a time. This not only allowed me to consume more lollipops, but also provided flavor combinations I had never considered. Bubblegum root beer, green apple pina colada, cream soda blue raspberry fruit punch. They were all amazing, and I had so many to try now. By the end of the 6th bag, untold hours had passed, and I had lost count of how many teeth had broken in the process. Around bag number 9, reality set in. The mouth throbbed and pulsed in unimaginable pain, and so did my stomach. I thought I was going to throw up, but I didn't. I can't. I can feel the thick blood mixing with sugar and running down my throat, sweet and coppery all at once. Oh God, it's so sweet. Sweet and heavy in my stomach. I can feel the fluid rising in my stomach. There's not much room. I can feel it. Oh God, I can feel it rising. Not just in my stomach either, no. The fluids have pushed up past my stomach. They've fought their way into the bottom of my throat. As the blood drains from my mouth, my throat fills slowly. Slowly, it's climbing up my throat, coating the walls of my insides. Oh God. What have I done? What did I do? What did I do to end up like this? I'm going to drown in my own blood. I know it. It's just a matter of time before the blood begins to overflow into my lungs. Oh God. I'm going to die. I'm going to die, and it's all my fault. All for some stupid fucking candy. Oh God, I'm going to die. My throat is seizing. I can feel my lungs filling. I'm going to die, and all I can think about is that I still don't know. I still don't know. I don't know what the best way to eat a lollipop is. I'll never know. It's all I wanted, and now I'll never know. I'll never know, and I'm going to drown in my own blood. I'll never know.